I am 100% positive that at some point in time you have asked yourself, how can a YUGO hold up to 250 horsepower? Now, I'm sure that you guys have never, ever asked yourself that question, but there have been a few of you in the comments who have been telling me throughout this whole build process that we need to stiffen the structure before we do anything. And not just here in the engine bay, but into the entire interior as well. That means all of this interior has got to come out. You see, the YUGO is only built to withstand 55 horsepower, not much more than that in torque. And in reality, these things probably had somewhere in the 40 horsepower range. So here's some of the things that we're gonna do to combat that. All throughout the car, this thing is simply pinch welded together along all these seams, up around this strut tower, in and around the firewall, floors, doors. All of that structure is gonna have to be strengthened. Which means in most of these areas, we're gonna have to grind so that we can weld, and some areas we're actually gonna have to cut. Like in places where we gotta get rid of this battery bracket, we've also gotta cut out this rust and make room for a patch panel. Another area is right here in the bottom of the floor where the lower control arm, the rear lower control arm mounted. You see, we're gonna be replacing the suspension, and this mount will have to come out to replace it with a control arm mount. So what we've got here is a Toyota Tercel style control arm. And the way that we're gonna mount this is basically as you see it, where this bottom control arm mount right here is what we're gonna use right here. We've got the U-bolt style mount that will wrap around this control arm here. And once we figure out the actual location, we will have to design a bracket to mount over here onto this control arm. And that's what we're gonna be doing. I've got two control arms, two ball joints, two of those U-bolt mounts, and all the bolts to bolt it together. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna concentrate on the engine compartment, which entails removing some of this wiring and grinding out sections of these seams so that we can get some weld in there. So seeing how there's a lot to be done, let's get at it. Right now would be a good time for you guys, if you haven't already, go down to the first link in the description box below, get yourself your very own YugoTa t-shirt. That's right, we're selling YugoTa t-shirts to help fund this project. We've sold a few of them already. Make sure you get yours, take a picture of yourself wearing it, and make sure you tag Olde Carr Guy. Now, let's get back to work on the YugoTa. So I guess the first thing that we're gonna do in here is we're gonna cut out this bad section, and I think we're gonna come all the way over to where it just starts to taper down a bit on this side, and then we'll go basically over here on the other side of these two studs. I forget what those studs hold, but I don't think we're gonna need it for the Toyota engine. So we're gonna come up here, right up into this little seam, and then we'll try and get that seam pulled away and cut out. We'll see how bad that is inside there, and we'll see how far up the rails and down the rails the rust goes. I've got a boroscope, we'll check that out. Let's get this cut out. And guys, if you're like me and you wear glasses, you've probably spent hundreds of dollars trying to find the exact perfect set of safety glasses that fit over top that you can still see and you're not going to damage your prescription glasses. I'm going to leave an Amazon affiliate link down in the description box below. I finally found mine. I hope they're going to work for you if you guys need a set. They're really, really good. Guys, if you've been watching any amount of automotive YouTube content recently, I'm sure that you've heard of a company called VEVOR. They sell a lot of parts, tools for working on whatever it is you're working on. They reached out to me with this endoscope. So what we're gonna do with it right now is we're gonna see how far the rust goes up inside these frame rails here on the YUGO. And I know that we've got some rot right there. So we're gonna go down inside the frame rail and just see what kind of rust we are up against. So as you can see, we do have a little bit of rust down in there. We're gonna have to treat that and get that cleaned up. And if we go up inside the upper frame rail, everything seems pretty good up in there. So I'm hoping that we won't run into any troubles with this thing. This also will record. There's a record button. So if I was just to hit that right there, it'll take a snapshot, or if I press and hold the button, it will actually record. And well, there's me upside down because I don't have it turned the proper way. There we go. And again, you can go right up inside there and you can use the camera to see and record whatever it is you're doing. So if you guys want to try out this VEVOR endoscope, make sure you check my Amazon affiliate down in the description box below and get one for yourself. They're not terribly expensive, and it's another important tool you can add to your collection. So thanks VEVOR for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the YUGO. So I don't think we have a whole lot to worry about in this section right here. I will grind away all this extra stuff where the pinch welds are. That is in pretty good shape, and even though we got some blisters going here, that'll clean up, and I'm not too worried about that. Down here though, I think we're gonna have to open this up a little bit and put a patch in there. The rust is a little bit worse off on this section, and again, I think we're gonna end up having to cut that out and patch a piece of metal in there. So even though we've got to cut this little section out and put a piece in there, we're going to be welding up these seams anyway to build the structural integrity. So I'm really not too worried about a small little, 1.5 or 2 inch square patch. So the next thing we got to do is get the bracket out of here for the battery. Good, we're going to compressor kicked on again. All right, so we've been cutting and grinding away in here. We got this little spot here all cut out. We got the battery tray removed, and we got just some fine tuning done here. And what we're gonna do now is, because I'm just about done on this section for the day, is I'm gonna take some of this rust off rust converter. You can get this in Canada. We get ours at Napa. I'll see if I can find the link and leave it down below. But you're gonna wanna have some mittens while you're spraying this stuff. That gets on your hands and it does not come off. But we're gonna spray this up, make sure all the cracks and crevices are good and sprayed. When that dries, it'll be good to not only paint, but weld. So let's get this sprayed up. And then the rest of this job in the engine compartment is gonna be just grinding and cleaning and getting these welds, or these seams ready for weld. So that's what I'm gonna be doing this afternoon. I'm gonna get this sprayed up and I'll pop back up with you in a minute here with an update. So it is the next day, it's Sunday morning, and this time change kind of sucks, but gives us a little bit more daylight at the end of the day. We sprayed that rust converter on yesterday. Let's take a look and see how it looks today. So you can clearly see what it did to the metal is it basically cut the oxidization rate out. And you can see there where I grinded that seam, and then down here where we cut it out. Turned it all kind of a chalky white. Now that stuff there, if you wanted to paint it, it's just a matter of sanding it down. You could do body fill to fill in some of the divots if you wanted to, and it's ready to go. But what we're gonna end up having to do is we're gonna end up having to cut a piece of stock and fill in this frame rail to make sure that that's better. We'll probably plate it on the outside to reinforce that as well. As the little hole down in here, we sprayed some of that rust off down in there. So from here on out, we're just gonna concentrate on getting as many seams as we can get to ground, just like we did here. So we're gonna get the tops of the strut towers, we're gonna get against the firewall, we're gonna get down this frame rail and all down around that rad support today. At least that's the goal. And hopefully be back here kind of buzzing in some welds to kind of stiffen that up in here. Once we get under the hood done, we're obviously going to have to get back into that corner and over here into this corner where the wiper and the washer fluid reservoir are. We can kind of come into the interior and start stripping this out and getting into all the seams in here as well, because obviously we've got to make this thing as rigid as possible. We likely will be putting a roll cage in here, be coming down through the firewall here, go up, there'll be a halo around the seats and mount it here, and likely coming back down this way here somewhere. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I don't know much about roll cages, but I'm sure I can watch a YouTube video and figure it out real quick, just like I learned how to weld. Anyways, let's get to grinding. All right, so as you saw, we got a lot of these seams ground down and trying to get it ready for some welding. But before we do that, I don't know when we're going to get to the welding, but I'm going to treat it with the rust off again. And I don't know if you guys could tell in the time lapse, but we ran across a few rusty spots that we're going to have to look after here as well. So let's take a look at that. So these two brackets right here are going to come off. But over here along this front header panel, we get a lot of flaking rust and some light surface rust that we're going to have to grind all that down. Same thing up into here along this edge. And as we come over here, we had some underneath the headlight bucket. Again, we're going to be welding that in there, and we're going to have to clean that up at some point. A lot of little stuff that we're going to have to tinker with at some point in time, all along here, all along this front part, is stuff that we're going to have to look after. This really, truly is the worst of the rust on this car. But if we're going this far, we're going to have to look after it. Even if we end up wrapping the vehicle when we're done, this stuff has to be done, at least down here, has to be done so that the wrap doesn't look like crap underneath. So I'm going to grab the rust off. I'm going to spray all these parts down. This time I'm actually going to put some cardboard underneath the car because when that dripped yesterday, it stained the floor. As you can see right there where it was dripping, but it left a white film, and that will stay there until it wears off. So we've got to put some cardboard down to keep that stuff from dripping all over my floor. Grease stains, those will come up. No big deal. A little bit of brake cleaner and some rubbing, no big deal. And then this is where everybody comes in and says, well, Jason, you should have epoxied your floor. Yeah, I probably should have. But for 1,600 square feet, that's a lot of epoxy and super expensive. So, quite frankly, I really don't care that much. But anyways, let's get to spraying this thing down, and I'll be right back with you. So it's now Tuesday evening, and I realized I didn't shoot an outro or an ending of this video. So this is the ending of this video. In the next video, I'm hoping to have a couple of things ready to go. One is I've got to get a argon cylinder for my MIG welder so that we can come back here and kind of stitch in these welds. And we're going to start tearing apart the interior so that we can kind of continue that path throughout the whole car and get as much of that done as possible. So I'm hoping that that's the next video. We then have got to get the suspension mounted in place. And my buddy Dustin, who kind of hornswoggled me into the YUGO and the 1NZ swap and everything that I'm doing here, this was his suggestion, and I actually like it. I would never tell him that, but this is what we're doing. We've got to get a template set up, and I've got some measurements off of his Paseo on where the actual location of the control arms are going to go. Once we have that done, we can center that forward ball joint with the center of the wheel well. We want the wheels to be center. Once that's done, we'll know that we can put our strut in. Once we get our strut in place and our suspension hanging and all of our fabrication work done, then we can come in and put the engine and transmission back in place and get those mounts for the transmission over here, for the engine over there, and then the back mount over here. Once we get that done, we know that we can start working on this 1NZ and tear it apart and make sure that we have enough power to beat the ever-living snot out of Alan over at Compass Garage. Because if you guys haven't been following him, I'm going to leave a link up here to his channel. He found himself a B-Series Honda engine. Yeah. Those backwards friggin' engines are like super powerful stock, like 165, 70 horsepower stock. And I can only guess he's going to be building it and putting some forced induction into it. And he'll probably, let me rephrase that, he'll want to think he's going to wipe my ass with his car. But Dustin and I have decided we're going full moon boost on this son of a gun. And if you don't know what moon boost is, well, it's all of it. That's going to conclude this episode of Olde Carr Guy. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed, because when you're subscribed, it helps YouTube push my videos out to more people when you watch them. And the only way to watch them is when you get notified. You don't have to go searching for them. Thank you so much for being a part of this channel. Thank you so much for buying the YugoTa t-shirts and the things that I have mentioned from my Amazon store. Stay focused on the windshield, not the rear view mirror. I love you guys. God bless. Let's do it again real soon.